Hi, this is Pat Moorhead, founder and CEO of More Insights and Strategy. We're back for another Hot Desk podcast with Melody Brue. Mel, how you doing?
Good. I just noticed it's episode 13 and it's Friday, but it's not Friday the 13th. So we're in good shape.
Wow. Hopefully there's no jinxing there. But no, we've made it 13 episodes without being canceled. We get good feedback. We appreciate that. And if it's your first time to the pod, we're talking about the next normal in modern work. And as Mel so eloquently says every single time, it's people tech. That's what we're talking about here. So we're pretty excited about the show. We're talking HP's endpoint security event. Sorry, endpoint security at HP's event that Mel went to. Talking contact center trends for 2024. AI is just changing that incredibly. We're going to talk about Grammarly, which we use here for enterprise scale AI. Interesting. And of course, my favorite, hot or not. And in this case, it's COP28. Is it hot or is it not? Let's jump in. Mel, you were in New York for HP's Security Summit. I think I had done 7 of those before, and I appreciate passing the torch to you on this event.
Nice. Yeah, it was great. And you know what was really great about it too is that we got a nice little CES preview. They had a really nice setup, and I can't talk about it because it's all under NDA. It's all embargoed, but had a really nice setup right before the security summit started, where I got to play with lots of new devices. And there's some things you're going to want to see for sure. We're going to have to get some in your hands. But it was the best part about CES is not going.
Right. You want to go? We can arrange that. So,
I think I've been probably 20 times in my career, and I'm really happy with companies doing all these previews. And HP did a really, really nice one, and they have some cool things coming out. So we'll talk about that once we can. But yeah, so I say for the security part of it, and I think something that's really worth talking about, and something that's really interesting, and that has changed quite dramatically with hybrid work, with people working remotely, working from home, and now even working from their watches, their phones, their cars. All of these different endpoints require these really sophisticated systems for security, even printers. Now, this was something that, it's kind of something you have to wrap your brain around if it's not something that you live in. I mean, who really thinks that much about printing? But obviously it's a really important thing. The data that's transmitted just from your device to a printer. And if you are not in the office, how are you guaranteeing that printer is secure? If you're printing at home, is it then being left on a printer? Or if you're doing a print from the office, from home to the office, is it being left on the printer? So all of this really sophisticated security that's being built into the endpoint, meaning that if I print print from my computer to the printer, nobody else can just come by and pick it up. I actually have to do the authentication at the device to get that document. So when you're talking about really sensitive personal information and company data, there are all of these ways that HP is safeguarding that data and safeguarding the machines. And really, when you think about it, if an enterprise that has 20,000, 200,000, however many machines out there, if one gets lost, they don't actually care about the machine; they care about what's in it. And so it was really interesting just to see just the level of security from day zero or 0 day, however some people say it, but basically from the factory to installation of the software, how much protection goes into these devices when they're running in an enterprise environment. But when you really think about it, anybody needs to think through that, right? Like my own device, if I leave it somewhere, the amount of personal data that if somebody is out to steal your computer, they're probably not doing it to sell it on eBay. They're probably doing it to get the data. It's not the actual piece of hardware that has the value. It's the data. And if they're smart enough to figure out how to get it from you, they're smart enough probably to get that data from it. So it was fascinating to see just the levels of security, and also just the number of endpoints that you really have to think through to protect. And for me, print was one of those where I was like, wow, I didn't really think about the sophistication of safeguarding printers. And even taking that to a consumer standpoint, and obviously we know HP does both enterprise and consumer, how important it is to safeguard that information that you're feeding through to your computer. And I think that's something that a lot of consumers and probably a lot of workers don't really think about. That's definitely like on the EIT and CISO side of the house, but it is really something that there are so many ways, especially now with AI, that people are trying to get into people's systems and steal data. And so it's very, very important to have that endpoint security be that frontline defense. So there's my big wrap up from what I learned in New York. But it was
So, yeah, I mean, HP has always been aggressive on endpoint security, and it really has been a spy versus spy. They had a really interesting collaboration with a company, and they still have it, that uses machine learning to be able to detect threats in what I considered a very unique way. And they also have some rollback capabilities for BIOS, because BIOS is about as low level as you can get. That I think is pretty unique. But with this generative AI, we haven't even scratched the surface on yet on what is, spy versus spy, which is whose AI is better than that. But thanks, Mel, for that. Looking forward to seeing what HP brings out for CES. So
yeah.
contact center trends for 2024. Um,
Excuse me.
no, it's okay. There's things going around here, but
It was just a
I,
tickle bit.
I hope we're going to have a conversation about generative AI here, but you're the expert. What
We
are
are.
some of the trends for 24?
We are, and I think there are so many things I think we have to look at about trends for 2024, and one of them for sure is going to be kind of how the workplace is going to change. I think we'll do that on our last pod of the year. But I wanted to start with contact center, because contact center is one of the places where generative AI is taking off the most. IBM did a study that said 80% of customer service organizations will use Gen AI for improved CX by 2025. So that's just a year away. 80% of organizations. And I can see it with all of the vendors, with the contact center vendors. They're all like really focusing on the things that we're looking for in terms of the trends for 2024, which is, the AI and automation integration, which is really just about kind of taking a step away from that rules-based decisioning, the horrible decision trees, and using the AI to predict customer needs. That automation with the AI kind of tackling the complex tasks and good Lord, tackling the complex tasks, and reducing the response times makes people more efficient. But really, it's on the customer experience focus. But you can't have a good customer experience if you don't have a good employee experience. And I think so often where I hear people talking about agents and employees in a separate category, like as if agents aren't employees. Agents are employees, or they at least have to be looked at as employees. And agents, especially this time of year, that employee experience, that agent experience, really does actually influence the customer experience. I mean, think about like how much that's integrated into it, and to have that real customer experience focus, the AI integration with the human agent remaining essential, really just like it really emphasizes the need for the well-trained agent, but with the proficient AI integrated into the workflow. So I think we're going to see a lot of that. And then, of course, the omni-channel evolution. People just expect, especially with AI, that they can get a hold of somebody 24/7. I'm sure you've had this happen where you go into for some service and they say, we'll get back to you tomorrow. That's just unacceptable today. people need responses right away. And with Gen AI, they should be able to get one. They should be able to get at least enough of a response to get them to the place of, of some resolution, if not full resolution. And then I think because of Gen AI, we do have some of these security and privacy issues that are sort of introduced into the adoption of AI. So I think we're going to be looking at enhanced encryption methods. We've got to be looking at AI data or threat detection and much stricter access controls. And again, back to people are working from home. A lot of these contact center employees are working from their home. So who has access to what and when, and how does AI help to kind of route those, the more sensitive, like, in a banking environment or something where the personal information is there, route those particularly more high sensitive calls to someone that is actually in a contact center, not taking these calls from home. So much of this AI and automation is going to help with that. The employee experience, like I talked about, and then really just integrating the voice recognition and the neural language understanding is going to help so much, just for sort of that efficiency of getting agents to the place where they can then resolve the issue rather than go through, tell me again what, your problem is for the 10th time. So I think we're going to see a lot of shifts in what's happening in contact centers. And this is just, kind of some of the top things that I think are going to really change what happens in the contact center. Data clearly is going to be a huge one. And with AI, we're going to get so much data out of what's happening in the contact centers. We're seeing RingCentral, Zoom, Five9, so many companies already using so much of this data that they're already getting out of what improvements and the efficiencies that they're getting just from using, pretty basic, I would say, kind of chatbot, where I think it's going to get much more advanced over the next year, 2 years. But like I said, 80% of customer-facing organizations will be using Gen AI, and I think contact center is going to be one of the biggest use cases. And now I'll breathe. I was like, I'm trying to get
there. I mean, listen, I generative AI is a trend, not a fad. I believe it's going to solve real challenges that people have. And I think in the areas that Web 1.0 and Web 2.0 didn't address are going to be addressed by this technology. So it's super exciting, and I'm glad to know that you're going to be chronicling it, shaping it into the future. So let's move to our last official topic here before Hot or Not, and that is Grammarly. What's going on with Grammarly? There are a lot of competition. Yeah.
Yeah, so they do have a lot of competition, and I think that they're really kind of putting their best effort up to kind of keep up with competition like Microsoft Copilot and Google Duet. I mean, they're integrating into lots of different places. They do have like a chatbot feature within Grammarly where you can ask questions, but they just announced a couple of new features, which one of them is unlimited prompts for enterprise customers. So that's really where they're focusing on kind of this enterprise scale AI, where you can ask things like, help me to write an outline for a blog, or help me to summarize this document, or basically ask to poke holes in documents. You can say, what am I missing? Or what are the key points in this document? So they've upped the prompts for enterprise customers to unlimited. The Teams version, customers, not Teams as in Microsoft, but Teams, which is their, like business Teams, their various tiers, now have double the prompts, which is 2,000. It used to be at 1,000. And using the chat box, you can ask for more context. So ask it questions where it really becomes conversational with the chat bot. So if you say, like, what are the points I'm missing, and what would you do to improve that kind of conversation with it. And then they have some other things that they've added. Some are for premium users, some are for free users. So free users have like positioning anchors and citations. I think for citations, for us, like for research, that's really helpful. They don't have it in enough websites right now where it's really solid, but I did speak with them, and they plan on having a lot more. Right now it's in Wikipedia, it's in, you can put in, if you use ChatGPT there, but they're adding websites all the time where you can just automatically generate a citation from a piece of text, which is super helpful. When I was, I like to drop the Yale thing, when I was getting my certificate at Yale, I had to use citations for everything, and I actually used the Grammarly citation, and it's quite helpful. But one thing that did come up while I was looking, kind of at all of their things. Hey, Anshul.
Hey, Anshul, how you doing, buddy? Miss you.
I love when we get comments, live comments. Anyone want to ask a question live? We like those
That's
too.
funny.
But one thing that I did come across when kind of looking into more of their AI features is that they do use some customer anonymized data. They say they strip it completely, but they do use some customer data to train their LLMs. That was reported in one news publication. They reached out to them, they got clarification, and they said that if you ask for a security check, you can turn that feature off. I do think that's it's slightly cagey. I like that when companies lead with toggling off and notify you that you can toggle on or off. I think having to ask for a security review to toggle that off if you're under 5,000 seats is not the way to go. Even if you are if you're anonymizing the data. I think if you ask real security experts, they will tell you that data is not able to be purely anonymized. Even if you strip it of personally identified information, there's still some things that can get through. So I think that's a bad move. And I'm basing this on clarification from the company that they gave to another outlet. So if they want to give me further clarification, I will very happily revise that. But as of now, this is what I know. And I appreciate companies that start like Zoom, that start with toggle off, like Microsoft, that it is in your face what it is doing. It is very clear that anytime you enter in a prompt, you know exactly what it's being used for, if your data is being used to train a model or not. In some cases, companies are using it as a trade-off. If you are getting it for free, you know that it's going to be used to train a model. That's a trade-off, right? But if you're paying for a service, it should be a toggle on, toggle off, very, very specifically upfront, and it's not something that should be hidden.
I think it sounds cagey to me, especially with what we went through Zoom. But the fact is that Grammarly doesn't have enough data like Microsoft or Google does to not be able to train on customer data and kind of obscure it. Hey, let's move forward. We have 2 minutes to get through hot or not. COP28. Are we even allowed to use the sustainability word anymore?
I don't know. It's funny. There's so many, I feel like it's going so drastically in different ways, where for a while, like we saw, there was sort of this green hushing where nobody wanted to talk about it because it seemed like a big distraction. And I really like the direction that a lot of companies are taking. And this is a little bit off the COP28 category, but so many companies are taking this direction of really moving sustainability into their products and talking less about sort of the greenwashing discussion, although there is stuff that has to be discussed and there are regulations around it. So Conference of the Parties 28 was held in Dubai, a record attendance with 80,000 participants. It was the largest international climate conference. So of those 80,000,
all of them, do they all sail in their boats, their sailboats, or private jets?
Yeah, well, so when you think of it that way, Pat, you are absolutely right. There were 2,400 fossil fuel lobbyists among them. There were
How about
340
that?
lobbyists, right?
Spy versus spy.
Yep. There were 340 lobbyists from the meat and dairy sector. So, and the president of COP for this year is from Dubai, which is a very oil-rich country. So there was just a lot of controversy around this year. I think there were definitely some challenges. There were some criticisms. There was definitely inadequate focus, I think, on a consensus base on methane emissions from agriculture. There you go. The meat and dairy lobbyists were there. There was some weak language, I think, in some of the accords. I think there's really just a push for more transparency. But I think that you are right. To put 80,000 people into a conference in Dubai, where I flew to Dubai in October. It took me 16 hours on a jet to get there. So yeah, there's some contradiction there. But I think, in general, there was a little bit of optimism that came out of it, but there was definitely some acknowledged limitations that came out of it. And I think, hope to drive a little bit more of, I think what's really needed is just some consensus around language, around how people are going to report things and talk about them, so we can get away from, is this greenwashing? Are we all kind of trying to move towards the same thing and stop politicizing it? Just make it's like a very standardized approach to reporting. And as scope 3 emissions are mandated in reporting, it's something that just has to be done. And I think we're seeing some companies like SAP and SuccessFactors doing that really well without it becoming such a like, I'm right, you're wrong thing. It's just facts. It's like, I had an accountant once at a nonprofit that I was on the board for, said, they're just numbers. You can't be mad at it because they don't care. And I think that that's kind of the approach that we need to take with regulations on this. Set the number, and everybody just needs to be able to measure them and report them, and in a way that is consistent and auditable. And I think the hot or not on this was a little bit of a play on words with global warming.
Well, I saw where you were coming on this, and I think it needs that, but I also think it needs a dialogue about the downstream effects. I don't think we can continue to push our pollution problem to different countries. I don't think it's a good idea to outsource our energy production to tyrants and despots, so they can use it against us in the future. And if we're going to come up with something that says that we need to have a certain amount of electric cars on there, it'd probably be a good idea if we factored in the pollution it causes to create the electricity and the production of that electricity, and actually have a grid that's capable of supporting those cars. And right now, the Biden administration is advocating something that would require 10x more power than we currently have in the United States today. And I believe that we should be looking hardcore and nuclear. I think it's the only way we're going to get the amount of power that we need. And we have to also a very open dialogue. I mean, when it comes to solar panels and dumping the old ones in the landfills after
Right.
25 years, the toxic chemicals that are in those. So I think it's time
Batteries as well.
for, yeah, I think an open conversation about how we're going to do this down the line that's realistic, and getting groups of people to get agreement on certain areas. But that's my point of view. We got to wrap this up. I want to thank everybody for coming in. And if we don't have, I don't think we have a video until next year.
I think we have one more.
One more.
It's real tight right up in before the new year, so we'll see if we do it, great. If not, we'll start off the new year with a bang.
Yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in this year. Really appreciate it. We couldn't do this without you and your support. And give us feedback to Mel and I over social media. Take care. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whichever you want to pick. You just lean into it.
Happy
Take
New
care.
Year.